Good morning. Today is June the 10th of the year of our Lord, 2024. It is a sunny Monday. I think. I didn't even check. I don't even care anymore. It is a sunny Monday morning, and this morning we have a Q&A with our very own Pastor Virgil Walker, who is with us a second time. He liked us to the point that he came back a second time. I was surprised. Yeah.
We begged. There was a little bit of
Yeah.
begging. Yeah.
Well,
I thought Brian shouldn't have sent the email because he doesn't like Brian.
Someone else should.
But he is with us. He's our esteemed guest speaker for our all-church retreat. So an awesome Q&A coming your way on the Dear Church podcast. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
My name is Joseph.
Joe who?
Joseph Mother. No. Sam wanted me to do this job.
I didn't. I never said that.
Boom.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, that's
Bad.
tough.
This is why the live version gets all the stuff we cut out.
I don't normally say Joe Mama and stuff like that on the recording.
Well, I never said
He never
that.
said
No,
that.
I'm
You
saying-
just said
Goodness.
that. So we know
My
where the joke
goodness.
came from, bruh. You just busted yourself. That's messed up.
We have with us Pastor Eugene and the very exciting podcast legend,
Oh, come on.
the TV legend also as well.
Internet legend.
Internet legend,
Legend in my reels.
Legend in my
Twitter
own mind.
legend, just a legend all in all. Exciting to have with us Pastor Virgil Walker. You can give him a round of applause. Oh yeah, very, very exciting. We've been counting down
Thanks
the-
for having me. You have very low standards, though. You probably need to.
So I was actually going to do that.
Hey, by the way, I've got to
Yes.
give a shout out to my dear friend Paul Yoon.
Oh my gosh.
I got to get that in before we get started. I got a boo for that. What's up with that?
No, so that man,
Yeah,
Has
I had to
been-
get that in.
yeah, he's been trying to get on the podcast for 3 years.
Paul Yoon is the man, Doc. You got to have him on.
Oh, man.
That dude, man, he's a beast.
This is the worst. This is the worst. Anyway, I gotta calm myself. Today,
You owe me $100 though. I just want to get that on the microphone. I'll holler at your boy here in a minute. All right.
oh man, yeah, that's pretty terrible. But today we do have a Q&A, some questions that people have sent in so far during the retreat, and some questions actually on some of the recent articles that you've published,
Awesome.
which is going to be great. Does anyone have any water for Pastor Virgil
I tried.
and Sam?
Are we on video? Is that what the deal is? So
Oh, so we have video now.
okay, got it. So I wasn't
Yeah.
being secretive with
No,
that.
so they
Okay.
catch everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
You can't even smile wrong here.
Got it. Now I know.
This is
Hey,
all
thank you.
for Brian.
Yeah.
Just extra work for Brian.
Dang, we had that one water? No. No, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not thirsty. Do not give Paul water, please.
Paul gets some water.
No Fiji for you.
No, it's okay. I like Great Value purified drinking water. But today we are talking about a couple different topics, and I think it's really helpful because it's right on theme. It helps us to understand how we are to continue this race, how we are to persevere as Christians. And so I think this will be a great time that will be edifying and strengthening to the saints here. And the first topic that we want to talk about, and this is an article that you actually wrote published on January 25th of this year, and it has to do with social media.
Okay.
The title was Christian Social Media Influencers, Helpful or Harmful? What was the answer? Was it harmful?
No, I think the catalyst for me for writing the article really had to do with kind of the way I'm watching Christians use social media.
Right.
I think there's a positive way in which you do it. Some are using it to, express their faith commitments. Others are using it in an effort to platform themselves, which there's nothing wrong with platforming what you do or your ministry. I think you've got to be careful when it comes to trying to platform yourself as a personality and what that looks like. It's not really like for a lot of folks, and again, it's kind of interesting. I would think some people, as they hear us talk about this, they would hear me say that and think, well, Virgil Walker, you've gotten a lot of the spaces and places you're in because of the platform that you have. But I would say to that, I really didn't. There was no goal on my part to be quote unquote platform. The podcast that I did or that I do with Daryl Harrison was an effort to, one, I loved his writing. Two, I thought he was writing about important, critical topics, subjects that had to do with culture that was of interest to me. And my goal in that was really getting his voice out. We had no idea when we started that it would be as popular as it is and get the acclaim that it has. And so all of it was kind of unbeknownst to us. We didn't go out and say, hey, you know what? We're going to create this platform. And as a result, we're going to get very popular. And then from that, we're going to write books and do things. That was not the goal. It was just two brothers who enjoyed talking to one another, dialoguing with one another, and wanted, kind of like what you're doing, just to have other people hear the conversation.
Right.
And then with that, the popularity came and vice versa. And so it was just for me a challenge to think about how are we as believers using social media as a platform, and especially with pastors. Personally, I think every pastor should have a podcast, not for the purpose of becoming quote unquote famous or quote unquote a celebrity, but more and more of the people in the church are utilizing tools like this where they are. They're learning from those tools. They're learning from those resources. And if you want to reach the folks in your church, the more content that you can produce that they're able to carry in their hand with them, it's to their benefit, and hopefully you're doing things in an effort to honor God. So again, a lot of nuance to the way in which you do social media. The other thing that was of interest to me, and I'll stop talking so somebody else can jump in, was just looking at some of the more influential ministries that are out there in social media. You have someone like a Joel Osteen who has 10 million followers. Well, you compare that to someone who we believe would be sound in their biblical teaching, like a John MacArthur, who has 150,000. You got 10 million on the one end of Joel Osteen, and 150,000 for someone as revered as John MacArthur, who's been in ministry for 50, 60 years. People like Joyce Myers with 6 million followers, T.D. Jakes with 4.5 million followers. When you look at people who have sound biblical teaching, their following is much less, and a lot of that has to do with the drive of the folks who are promoting those ministries. They're promoting their platform. They're growing a platform, whereas others, like I would argue that a John MacArthur is more focused on just sound biblical teaching, and those who find it do, and that's the extent of it. So.
Right, and that's actually why we started our podcast. We wanted our church to just kind of hear the teachings throughout the week, and we started actually during COVID in efforts to kind of connect with people and stay with people throughout the week. And so we had one pastor, and then I guess one normal person.
It usually takes that.
Yeah,
it usually takes that.
Yeah, and it's been through 4 years. This is like episode 204 or something.
Wow,
like
that's fantastic.
It's tiring.
Yeah,
I'm tired now.
It's some work, man.
Yeah. I don't talk that much on the podcast though, but I did have some stats, and I think this was from your article as well. There are 5.07 billion social media users as of April of 2024, and this is 62.6% of the global population, and that talks to the reach of social media. The average person spends 2 hours and 20 minutes per day on social media.
Yeah,
and so it's a powerful tool that has a long reach, and also has our attention, obviously, for at least 2 hours and 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, celebrities, churches, companies, anyone that wants to get their message heard, they effectively and efficiently use all types of social media. And so I guess the question is, and you kind of addressed this yesterday as well and just now, but how then should Christians be using social media in a way that glorifies God? Because does that mean then that we just have to be sharing our quiet times or devotions? Does that mean that we have to be praying on social media? Does it mean we have to use the word God or Jesus? Like, how do we use our social media in a way to glorify God.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends upon the role that you have where you are. For me, as a person who works at a ministry, I use it obviously to promote, to let people know about what our ministry, the resources that we have in our ministry. As an individual, and I know that a lot of folks follow me for the purpose of understanding cultural content or cultural issues through the lens of a biblical worldview. So I'm using it to advance those ideas. Some people who, perhaps don't have that vantage point are using it to gather information, to obtain information, what's going on out there in the real world. So I think there's a variety of ways that you can use it. I will say, especially for platforms like X and the like, it's becoming a challenge because with the open kind of free expression of ideas comes with it a lot of negative things. You're seeing a lot of bots with pornography. You're seeing a lot of other things that are beginning to show up more often than not. And so I think a Christian has got to be thinking about social media in the same way that they would any other type of media they consume, any other type of information resource that they would consume. Be thinking about, am I consuming something that is God honoring, God glorifying? Am I producing material and content that is God honoring and God glorifying?
Right,
and all of that is on the basis of Scripture.
Should then ministers focus at all, or is it some sort of maybe is it some sort of level of adiaphora, or is it one of the extreme where you shouldn't care about it, or you should care about it a lot?
Yeah.
Where would you say you would give like a piece of wisdom to a minister who thinks, well, how much effort should I be putting in, or church resources should we be putting in to platform the pastor or to try to get the message out there?
Yeah, I think if the idea is platform the pastor, I'd say little to none. But if the idea is we want to get a message out there, based upon the research that I did for the article, one of the things that I recognized are really two things. One is social media is transforming the way we live our lives. It is transforming the way we think. It's actually rewiring our brains in some instances when you kind of look at it from a physiological level. And that's not always a good thing, but it is reality. And with that in mind, I think pastors have got to be thinking about how can I use this platform to do exactly what you guys are doing, to reach the folks that God has given me responsibility to shepherd. I think that's the primary use. It's, okay, I know that the folks who are part of the flock that I'm providing oversight for, especially with all of these young people in this room that we're in, they're spending a predominance of their time on social media. How can we produce content resources to encourage, equip, reach them, educate them in ways that make sense? And so I think a pastor should give time as elders should think about what it would look like if they're endeavoring to enter that space, and then prayerfully and carefully engage. It should not be the primary driver of their time, which is what I'm seeing happening.
Should
in a
they
lot of
even be
instances.
worried then if, let's say, a pastor, not intentionally, but gets platformed and gets, 6 million followers?
Sure.
Should they then
Nice.
have a concern,
I'd be concerned.
right?
Yeah,
So there is an extreme that you can fall into then.
I do agree with
Okay.
that. Yeah, I do agree. I think if I would want to think about the motivations behind why you're doing what you're doing. I think there should be guardrails around what that looks like. There should be some level of accountability. What you are doing and aren't. There are whole organizations that come in and can kind of help ministries set up guidelines for what their social media space looks like. I think more importantly, the Bible sets up a very clear guideline. Scripture really kind of tells us when we're getting into a space where we're serving self, where we're serving our own ego, where we're serving for 6 million people to be looking at what you're doing. I'd have to wonder what you're doing. I'd really want to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to question the motive off the top, but I'd say, man, that's a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And what is it you're promoting? Because when you go down, I think in my article I did a list of like the top 10 ministries that have millions of followers. When you begin to look, they kind of roll the line of the Joel Osteens of the world, the Joyce Meyers, the T.D. Jakes, Rick Warren, Sadie Robertson Huff, Beth Moore. You've got, names like that. I think the one carve out would be Franklin Graham, and Franklin Graham has 2.9 million followers. His ministry, of course, his dad's ministry has been around for decades, and so there's a reason why people would follow him. But my guess is, and I'm certain Franklin Graham is not the one on the social media platform. He probably has a team of people who are providing that work for him, oversight for him, and the like. So more about their ministry than about him as a person.
No, I think what you said is pretty on the spot. I think it's maybe a magnified version of what we've been doing. I don't know what you think about that, but we've also been approached as a church from other consulting agencies. So he said, we'll come in, we'll look at what your church is doing. We'll see if people feel welcome. We'll see if people feel like they belong. We'll see if people have a good experience, and we'll give you this consultation. You'll give us a fee, and we can guarantee a growth of this, this multiplication.
Yeah.
And, we did turn them down, but
Good.
I think it is a thing where I think it's somehow correlated to social media.
Sure.
And then, so if you do have 6 million, does everybody love you?
Right.
What do you think about that? Maybe it is an extension of what we've been doing in the churches in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's an extension of the problem that's been happening. I think too many are focused on growth that is wide, a wide audience, a large audience, and does not have any depth to it. And so those are the kinds of things you've got to consider alongside it. Yeah, I wouldn't give money to anyone who decided they wanted to come in and consult on that basis. We have a manuscript. We have the Bible that can kind of walk us through exactly what we need to do as it pertains to God's church, Christ's church, and I think we need to operate.
But you're quite successful, though.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
With your not Dear Church podcast.
Could you
But
imagine
just
if
the
it was us
listening.
three?
Bro,
My goodness.
you ready?
No, I'm not. I'm really not.
But that was sort of an unexpected success, was it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, none of that was planned.
Yeah.
There was no way to plan out what happened. And again, a lot of it had to do with just the timing. Certain people who were influential, who were listening to what we were saying and promoted what we were doing. It wasn't a phone call that I placed to anybody to say, hey, would you promote this? Or, hey, would you promote that? It just really, God ordained happened. And, we're grateful. But that was never something that was planned. And if it had never happened, it would have been fine for either one of us. So.
Did you plan the whole, let's say, even the layout where you said with Daryl, we're going to talk for 4 hours?
Never.
Or it just happened?
No, it just happened. I think if you go
Wow.
back and listen to some of the early episodes, we were literally taking content from news articles, things we were reading, and we just kind of talked about them off the top of our heads and really kind of laid out, hey, here's kind of a direction we want to go. And then later it became, hey, let's take a subject and do a deep dive. And we started doing that. And Daryl is just a fantastic writer. And so a lot of times he would write all of his responses to the issue, and he would send it to me. And I'm more off the top, kind of ad lib. I'm much easier that way. And you could send me questions. I might look at them, but I feel better kind of on my toes, off the top of the head. And it was a wonderful blend of both, because what it did was it provided some direction and order and kind of here's the direction we're going. Here's the topic or subject matter, so that you wouldn't get bored hearing someone kind of read through. And Daryl's A, not boring, and B, even as he's reading, it sounds like he's just talking to you.
Yeah.
But in addition, you also had something kind of fresh in a reactionary way to what was being said. So I think that blend of both worlds kind of coming together was a benefit to what we were doing.
So I guess on the flip side of what we were talking about, we know that as Christians, that we want to use everything for the glory of God, even social media, even Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. But in what ways do you see Christians ensnared by social media? And the only reason why I ask is I've been in youth ministry now 10 years.
Wow.
I'm a beast. Anyway, sorry. So I've been in youth ministry for almost
He was waiting for you to say
Oh,
that.
he wanted
and
me to
then when
echo
you did
that?
it, yeah.
No,
just give it
because
He
you
had to
call
add
Paul
that.
a beast.
Yeah, so
I've
he
never
kinda
heard
had to-
that in
He
my
said
life.
Paul, though. You said Paul again. He got his name back on the podcast. My man.
Oh, that one was for free.
That was a
Amazing.
freebie, Doc. Nice work.
This is the worst. But in youth group, whatever the size is, we've always done these kind of experiments where we take away their phones. So whether it's a retreat or a small group setting or a Friday night Bible study, we take away phones. And what I've noticed is that when we do that, the kids actually enjoy us taking away the phones. Maybe, for the first 30 seconds, they'll, be like miserable.
Sure.
But then lo and behold, a couple minutes later, they're talking, they're laughing, they're running around. They're doing what youth kids should be doing. Whereas 5 minutes ago, they were just on their phones, just silent.
Sure.
Right. And it's interesting because even youth kids know that the phone isn't always the best thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
They know that, there are cons to social media. Mm-hmm. And I think the difficulty is we know that it's not the greatest for us, and yet we can't get off of it.
Sure.
Right. And so I guess my question is, in what ways do you see Christians ensnared by social media, by phone usage, and how do we turn this around?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. There are a lot of aspects that social media is impacting us, and it's not just kids; it's adults. I wrote an article about the issue of marriage and the fact that people are waiting later and later and later to marry, and one of the factors of that was their social media use. You would think that their social media use would cause them to become closer and the like, but it's actually having the absolute opposite effect. In the article, I wrote about how it affects men and women, and for women, it's incredible because I'd written about the fact that the dopamine hit for women is exponential, and what I mean by that is usually in the life of a female, it's their affirmation comes from their friend group. And so they'll have, I think one study said that between the ages of 18 and 25, and this included people that attended college, between the ages of 18 and 25, that the circle of friends for a female would be about 100 to 125 friends, both male and female. I think that's relatively large given current day, but I recognize it may have been a time ago, but it's about 125 friends. About 48% of those will be male, about 50 some odd percent will be, 52% will be female. Of that, women would get affirmation from that friend group. Hey, you look so pretty today. And I like that dress. I like that, all of that kind of thing. And they would get that from within that friend group. And that would be a dopamine rush that they would go, oh, I feel confident. I feel good about who I am and what's going on. And so what's happened now is that they have fewer friends, but they can get the same level of dopamine fix from their social media page. So they have a social media page. They put their picture on there. They take a picture of themselves in a dress or something nice. And now they've got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 friends who are now telling them how pretty they are and what they look like. And then after a while, that dopamine hit is not sufficient. And so for some, they'll begin to dress in certain ways so they can get more attention in an effort to get that same dopamine hit. What happens in those instances is the gratification that they're receiving from the social media apparatus is sufficient to keep their attention. So the males that they run into in the room are not enough for them from a standpoint of attention because it's not the same level, the same magnitude of dopamine hit for that female. So now she's waiting. It used to be she would marry at 23 or 25, and now I think the average age has moved up closer to 26, 27 years old before they think about marriage. For men, it's the other extreme, right? The men are experiencing all of what they can from these images that are pornographic. So rather than seeking real relationships with women who are in the room, they're seeking a fake relationship with someone that's on a social media page or somewhere even worse than that. So it's having impact, not just in the way of kids, students. Absolutely, it's having an impact on them, but it's also having an impact on adults, and it's really reframing how we experience life.
So I guess, to follow up from that, so what are some remedies or maybe some guardrails that we could be putting as Christians? Because I think the danger is we may know all of that and still do it anyway.
Right.
And I think that's the danger of it, because we know this is wrong, and we know maybe not to the extent that you just explained, but we know, about the effects that these applications are having on our lives. Yeah. But we still do it because, number one, it's so easy. Like you said, you wake up in the morning, you just turn on Instagram. Yep. It's so easy. It's so accessible. Yep. And so what are some remedies and guardrails that you could kind of advise us on that would
Yeah.
be helpful?
No, I think we all even know what those are, right? You could go on a social media fast and just kind of break away. You can put it down. You can remove. There are times when it's really important, especially if you're addicted in some way, to actually remove the app from your phone. Definitely, I think uses of resources like Covenant Eyes and the like are incredibly helpful, especially for guys, for men, and for ladies. Identifying the fact that hey, I'm really kind of hooked on how many likes this photo is getting, and having a conversation with another sister in the Lord, and beginning to have real honest conversations about those things. But again, all of those are things that I mentioned that we all know to do.
Yeah.
It's a matter of our willingness to actually do that kind of thing and walk.
Do we go controversial slightly?
Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
man.
What do you think about? I think you kind of answered it.
Uh-oh.
But Christian social media influencers,
Mm.
Can you name one? No, don't name it. I was just kidding.
Sam.
No,
Yang.
I'm not. You know
He
what's
tries,
crazy
though.
though?
He tries,
No, I don't
yeah.
try. It just comes out. But I think what I think you're right about when a girl posts,
Yes,
all these other girls say very nice things.
absolutely.
I've never gotten a nice
You
comment.
haven't gotten a nice comment, bro?
Yeah, no. And it's like, is it her fault? Maybe, but I'm just saying, like, I want some.
You want some affirmation,
And Pastor Eugene isn't nice to me.
right? I
Like,
get
there's
it.
no.
You do good work, bro. You do good work.
Thank you.
Yes.
All that for that. It's worth it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
A little dopamine hit.
But what do you think about that? And also, how would you respond? So there are a bunch of people. So we're talking to an audience here.
Sure.
I think there are people here, even listening to this, saying, social media, I get it's not that great. I want to like Christian influencers, but they're not. They're boring.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
want to follow them.
Okay.
Yeah, do I have to follow something that really doesn't pique my interest? It doesn't get me excited like these other things. Is it a discipline thing? And how should I go about even looking at that?
Wow. I think yes. My thought would be, regardless of whether it's social media, if the things of the Lord are not of interest to you, I'd have to ask if you're in the Lord.
Wow.
Right? I mean, I'd have to really start there.
Yeah.
So, before we get to the apparatus, the platform, what you're using, if godly things, if godly messengers don't do it for you, I think there's a deeper question that definitely needs to be asked. For me, it's not a matter of boring or exciting. It's a matter of truthful or falsehood. I mean, that's kind of the culture we're in. It's not, hey, is it bright and shiny, and does it make me feel good or tingle all over? It's is what's being delivered true, or is what's being delivered false? And my hope would be that as believers, our goal would be to expand truth, to tell people the truth about things. Anyone who's telling the truth, those are the folks that attract me. I'm interested in what they have to say, and I'm hopeful that they understand that truth, not just based upon general revelation or common grace, but that they understand that truth on the basis of special revelation. They have a relationship with the true and living God that is the anchor, that is the justification for the truth that they're sharing.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, that's a part of our discipline. So you can kind of just, wait for the dopamine rushes.
Yep.
That's all you care about when you look at social media.
Yep.
But it's a different take when you look at social media and even put that under your discipline, saying,
That's good.
I'm going to look for truth here, and I can get tired, but that would even maybe limit your social media use instead of just mindlessly scrolling.
Absolutely.
Then you're looking for the truth. You can take in as much as you can, and then when you can't take it anymore, then you would put that phone down.
Yeah.
I think it's also a discipline issue, but definitely echoing what you said about if all you care about in one of the large, portions of where you get your input is just the dopamine hits.
Yeah.
That might be a big issue.
Absolutely. And again, I don't ever want to sound like I'm perfect in this. I'm not. I think there'll be periods in my time and in my walk where you'll be like, I thought that wasn't that brother on that podcast, and didn't he say to get off of the social media piece, and I'll track along and think, you know what, I've got to stop. I have to stop myself and get away from this for a bit and go do something productive. And so None of us are immune from being caught up in a cycle of not doing things well. Everybody, of course, except for my man Paul Hughes.
Oh no.
He's not. That
What is
brother's
number 4?
Yeah, he's gonna.
Who is this man? What did he do? But speaking of, I guess, looking for truth in social media, there is a lack of criteria to distinguish faithful ministers from false ones. And
Yes.
you mentioned this in your article.
Sure.
And oftentimes the validation that anyone needs is the follower count.
Sure.
Right. So if someone with a 10 million following says something, it has more weight
Sure.
than somebody with like 20 like me. Right. And so, and this is kind of what you were saying before, the top 5 most influential Protestant evangelical figures on X: Joel Osteen, 10 million. Joyce Meyer at 6.3 million. T.D. Jakes, 4.5. Franklin Graham, 2.9. And Rick Warren, 2.2. But these guys are, I guess, who I would consider like the OGs, right? We have new guys coming up, young guys coming up, Hillsong guys, Bethel guys, guys in California always coming up. And I think the danger is that sometimes they'll say right stuff.
Sure.
Sometimes. And then sometimes they'll mix in a little bit of poison with that right stuff. And it comes off right, but it smells fishy.
Right. It's almost right.
So, and for me, like when I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh, for sure someone caught this. Right. So I go to the comments. One of my favorite things to do. I go to the comments and they're like, oh, blessed minister. So blessed by your ministry. Keep preaching, brother or sister. Yeah, it's crazy. But so I guess what are the criteria that we should be having within our own heads as we look at these things? Again, the guardrails that we can keep to prevent ourselves from falling into the traps that these men and women are setting up.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it would be the same guardrails that any thoughtful person would have that would be looking for a church. You'll never find me being pastored by Joel Osteen. You'll never find me being pastored by T.D. Jakes. Now, there was a time in my life when I imbibed a lot of that false teaching, and I recognize and understand how people get caught up in that. But the messages that I'm delivering, of course, T.D. Jakes blocked me. I think I'm still blocked. Yeah, I'm still blocked. What does that say? What does that say, bro?
Bishop Jakes blocked you. Sorry.
Yeah, he's blocked me. See,
Yeah.
so and the reason he's blocked me is because I've said things about his ministry directly related to his false teaching, and so as a result, when you do that, oftentimes you get blocked. So, what's the criteria? I think it's what does the Bible say? I mean, for me, this is a no-brainer. Like, if I'm not going to listen to false teaching on the Lord's Day, I'm not going to listen to it in my Twitter feed. I'm not going to be exposing myself to it on any social media platform. And so I think it starts with: are you attending a biblical church? Are you listening to expository preaching, a pastor who effectively and rightly handles the word of truth? If that's what you're listening to, then you're going to be drawn to that when you get into social media. So,
Reformed Samuelito is my Instagram, by the way.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are we connected, bro?
No,
Okay, let me get on there.
you don't have to follow me right now.
Okay.
No, he's not on it. It's
Oh,
on
he's not?
Instagram.
Oh, he's on
No.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
one more time,
just
if you're on
pictures.
Instagram, his handle is Bad Vegan Man.
Okay, so there was a day in my life where I wanted to troll vegans, and so I made an account called Bad Vegan Man.
Why did you do that?
And what I would do is I would take pictures of meat dishes, and then I would say, "Oh, I fell again."
This is a real handle. He's not joking.
No, I really.
It's a real thing that he does.
Bro, that
And
is
then I think one
twisted,
time I was
man.
like, oh, typical vegan dinner, and had a cup of water.
Dang. He's laughing at himself. Like, he knows what he's going to say, and he's laughing at himself.
It was for me, actually. And then the worst part is actual vegans started following me,
Ah.
and they would give me encouraging advice.
Ah.
I was like, I don't need this. Anyway,
That's
yeah.
bad.
And then I stopped because I'm not really like that. Yeah. My character is very good. So.
That's messed up, man.
Yeah, that was I forgot about that. Anyway, sorry. Moving on from social media, this is a huge jump.
Okay.
But I want to talk about immigration.
Oh, wow.
That's smooth.
Wow, that was a smooth transition, Doc.
No, I was thinking, how do I connect this? How do I
Yeah.
connect this?
Wow.
Yeah, so just a big jump to immigration.
Sure.
Yep.
Let's do it.
But it's a huge topic that's getting bigger and bigger these
Sure.
days, especially
Yep.
with the election coming up.
Yep.
And the reason why I actually bring this up is because you actually had another article that was published
Mhm.
this year regarding immigration, and you have another one coming up, I
Yeah.
believe,
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah.
the Joe Biden executive order.
Yes.
And so I think the issue with immigration, at least with Christians, is what about compassion,
Right.
right? And that's the biggest question.
Mhm.
Isn't compassion a characteristic of a Christian? Didn't Jesus have compassion on the poor
Mhm.
and the needy? You know, we think about refuge cities. Like, don't we want to take in everybody that we can and help them?
Mm.
Isn't that what America is even about? And so I guess, how do we think through this, and how do we, kind of even pray through this?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that I wrote the article and kind of started out by saying that the issue is a divisive one. I think we've got to lay out what we're talking about as it pertains to immigration, right? There's legal immigration. There's visa applicants who come in and do their thing, work for a period. Now, many of the illegal immigrants that we have are because of overstays of visas, right? You have illegal immigration, and the particular catalyst for the article was watching what's happening at the southern border,
Right.
primarily with illegal immigration, and what's taking place. And if anyone's ever takes the time, not simply to hear the sound bites and kind of get on X or get on their favorite social media platform and begin to wax eloquent about the issue, if you stop and begin looking, there are people involved. I mean, these are human beings created in the image of God who are in very dangerous situations and circumstances as they try to cross the border. Many of them don't make it. There's all kinds of issues related to sex trafficking and the drug cartels that run these people as mules for their drugs. There's all kinds of issues related to that on the one end. On the other end, you have these cities that are border towns that are absolutely being overrun. And by overrun, here's what I don't mean. What I don't mean is that they're overrun with people who don't look like them and now they need to be scared. That has nothing to do with it. What it has to do with is the resources that are available to them, given the small nature of their town and the number of resources that they have, the hospitals that are available, the number of hospital beds that are available when people are coming across the border and they're sick or ill or need care. The children who are now entering school. You have a school of 150 or 200 kids, and now there's another 300 kids who don't speak English who are showing up at the school, and now there are no resources to help these non-English speaking kids in this English speaking school, and the teachers have no idea what to do with it. So there are real lives at stake, people on both ends of the issue that have real things to maintain and handle. And so we need to be thinking compassionately about everyone involved. I don't think it's wrong for a state, or for the United States in particular, the state of Texas specifically, the United States more generally speaking, to have a policy as it relates to the sovereignty of their country and how people should and shouldn't enter. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that we have a responsibility to humanely ensure that the laws that are on the books are actually followed. What's happening in this instance is that's not the case, that those who are in political power see benefit in allowing the chaos to take place. Either one, because they want to step in and be the savior, or two, they want to take full advantage of these folks who are coming in and for the purpose of seeing their opportunities to create a crisis and then solve the crisis come into play. And so that's kind of how all of this plays out. From a standpoint of what you asked, how should Christians think about this? I think we should think about this delicately and seriously, and think about it from a standpoint of what's happening with the lives of individuals, with real people. What are the laws of our land, and how should they be followed? We shouldn't. If someone is saying, you know what, we should follow the law and not allow people in, for someone to charge that's xenophobic, or for someone to charge that that's racist, that's a red herring. I don't care what your ethnicity is. Laws should be followed. We need to think about those things. And so there's a multiplicity of issues to consider. But this particular article was written at the point at which the governor of the state of Texas had kind of told the Biden administration that they were fed up, they were not going to listen to the federal government anymore because they had a crisis that they were going to manage. And all during the course of the year, they've used this, and they've put immigrants on buses and sent them to different places, especially those who call themselves sanctuary cities. And we're seeing the impact of that, right? In Chicago, people are outraged because they're now experiencing the kind of crisis that those who are in Texas are experiencing, where they've got limited resources. The same is happening in New York. I'm sure you're seeing the impact in the parts of New Jersey and aspects of that. And again, it has nothing to do with the level of melanin or lack thereof in anyone's skin. It's real life. It's real people. And I think we need to think about it less as a political hot potato, and Republicans and Democrats play the game along these lines. We need to think about it as believers who honor God's word, who honors the laws of our nation and the like. So.
Don't you think the longer we wait, though, the worse it'll get? Especially, well, can I give you an anecdotal example first? So there was someone I knew who came here illegally, came in with his parents when he was a kid. So he doesn't know anything about Korea. But he committed a crime. He went to Rikers, and then he was deported to Korea. But he had no family in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously this is a very tough time. The people that were working with him, all the social workers, the pastors at the time, I was talking with them as well as him. They would say things. They would see it as a partisan issue. They would never vote Republican or something like that. If we vote another Democrat, and someone like him can stay, because he was very sorry this happened. And so these are real issues, and I've been thinking about that. The longer you wait, let's say someone did come here illegally, and all they know is this country. What are you going to deport them? And then so it does, and then they'll say to you, "Hey, pastor, don't you think that you should follow the Bible? Doesn't the Bible say that you should be kind to the sojourner? And when you say follow these laws, doesn't that also mean that you would deport someone like who's been here 10 years, only knows America, and he's committed this, small crime, whatever it was. He got into a bar fight, because that was the case that the person I knew was in, and gets deported. So I don't think I could ever, let's say, think of immigration in another way. I mean, how could you respond to someone like that?
Yeah, I have no. I wish I had the perfect answer to deliver. I think we have to be compassionate. I think we have to think through all those variables. I think from the very time that the parents made the decision to come here, they had to consider that the consequences and repercussions could be such that they would be in a negative situation. So there's a responsibility there. Should we have compassion? Absolutely, we should, and should look for every way in which to provide that. At the same time, there are indeed consequences to the actions that are taken by some. And while I would love to paint a fairy tale picture ending for each and every person who presented that kind of situation, that's not life. It really isn't. I do think we are a nation of laws, and we need to consider all of those instances and perhaps have lawmakers think through what those look like and maybe where we should draw the line. But I promise you, as soon as we draw that line, there will be an instance right behind that line where we could have a very compassionate situation that we should look at very differently as a result. So there aren't any lack of individual unique situations like the one that you presented that won't tug at our heartstrings. We live in a fallen world, and the reality is people make decisions that have horrific consequences and outcomes that in some instances there's no way to overcome.
Yeah.
I know it's not a perfect, neatly tied bow answer.
I think I am kind of more upset at just the open borders we have. I think that's like a clear case for me,
right?
Where you're just setting up these millions of people to fail
Mhm.
and all those that are around them to fail.
Right.
There is a process that we could go through that can help them succeed.
Mhm.
So here's the path to success. And if you do it this way, you can succeed. And I get that, you think that whatever case, can't be worse than what you're, if you come here, is going to be better. But at the same time, not only will you disrupt, like you said, disrupt your own life, but all those that are around you. And to foster that kind of open border mentality is kind of extreme.
It is.
And
It is.
so I am concerned that when people, would take, let's say the Bible, will take, Leviticus and say you have to be kind to the sojourner.
Right.
Well, what about the other part in Leviticus where it says, make sure the sojourner follows your laws?
Right.
And so they'll only pick that one verse and say, if you're a Christian, follow this.
Right.
Well, how about we follow everything? So
Right.
we will be kind, but you also follow the laws in the
Right.
land.
Right.
And so there is a big concern. I think you said it in your sermon, but there is a big concern that even our Christians today, we're being manipulated by compassion, saying you have to be compassionate. And we are being manipulated because in the name of compassion, what they are taking advantage of is our biblical illiteracy.
Yes.
So we don't even know what's in the Bible, let alone our laws. And we
Mhm.
just think compassion, compassion, compassion.
Yep.
And it's the ruin of our country. It's the ruin of these, communities and cities that they're going into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's well said. Yeah. I don't disagree. I would amen everything you said.
So, how would you respond to someone that would think like this, though? And I'm trying to think because when people have this type of conversation, they might not know how to respond to rebuttal, saying, you're a Christian, you're supposed to have compassion, and I get it that open is not the best thing. But you're telling me that you can't fit in one girl that's been, suffering from violence in her home country, and
Sure.
she comes all the way over here,
Yeah.
just so that your quality of life gets diminished a little bit. You're saying that's an inconvenience for you. Like, what about quality of life for them? What about life for them?
Yeah.
How do you, like, as a Christian, how can you possibly,
Yeah.
right? And this is an extreme, right?
Sure.
But I think that's what people will do. They'll bring up extremes to kind of combat our
That's always
position.
the case. Sure.
And so, how would you respond to somebody that gives a rebuttal like this,
Mm.
an extreme like this, where they try to get kind of under your emotions a little bit?
Yeah.
Saying like, "Oh, you're so evil for thinking this."
Yeah. I say, take her and put her in your home.
Mhm.
Like, period. Point blank.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the compassion. What people who have that mentality and want to use Christian compassion as a bat by which to hit us over the head with and to capitulate to the degree that we adopt whatever they're trying to throw at us.
Right.
I say what those folks want to do is they want to look out there at large, and what they're unwilling to do more times than not is to look inside their own context. And so I would say, hey, I would encourage them to amplify the sadness of the story that they want to tell me. I would encourage them to tell me every facet that breaks their heart at the very core.
Yeah.
And then I would tell them, that sounds incredible. Why don't you open your home and allow that person, based upon all of the things that you said,
Right.
why don't you let them in your home? And again, I would help provide some additional resources, some things that would help. And then the next person that we find with that story or one worse, we're going to bring to your home. And then the next person that we find that has that story or worse, we're bringing to your home. At some point, you have to recognize there's
Right.
going to be a capacity that's filled and some decisions that you're going to have to make regarding who you can and can't take for the benefit of them as well as for yourself. And so if we can't be honest about those things, then we're not having an honest conversation.
I think that's helpful because I think this is a topic that I've not really heard a lot of Christians weigh in on. But this is a big topic. We hear it on the news all the time, especially with Joe Biden's executive order last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a big topic, and so that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Speaking of compassion, next segue, parenting,
Okay.
family life.
Yeah.
Because compassion. And you mentioned this yesterday as well about discipleship in the home. And
Yes.
we talked a little bit about family worship at lunch today.
Yeah.
But seeing the trend that is happening in the public school system in America, going further and further away from the Word of God,
Yeah.
how are we to educate our kids? And you also wrote an article, rethinking education as Christian discipleship. And you even mentioned legislation in 1647 called the Old Deluder Satan Law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. Could you
Yeah.
actually just kind of maybe talk about that a little bit and maybe, kind of tell us how we started and how we got to where we are now?
Yeah, it was interesting as I'm trying to find the article now. What was it? You remember the name of the article?
It,
Uh,
I think it was Rethinking Education as Christian
okay,
Discipleship.
all right. As I was doing the research on this, I wanted to go back and take a closer look at education in our nation, in our country. How did it come about? Where did it happen? Where did we get the ideas for education and the like? And so I found this very old law that, see if I can
I
find
just
it.
texted it to you. The
Did you?
article. Yep.
Let's see here. Oh, law. There we go. Rethinking Christian Education. This law was a law that, and I've got slow internet. You must have high speed internet. I've got slow internet. This was the old Deluder law. It was in Massachusetts in 1647. It actually began. It was the foundation for education. The old Deluder Satan law. It compelled a town that had 50 households to actually hire a teacher in the school system for their school system.
Right.
So they would, if you had 50 families, they would take a tax. The tax would be something that would be used to pay the teacher, and you had to set aside a building for the purpose of their education. And the thought process, the reason why this was called the old Deluder Satan law was because the instructor, you were to instruct the child in issues related to a Christian worldview. The Bible was used. And their thought was that if they could hire someone to educate in this way, that it would dilute, that you would not be deluded in the things of the world. It was the idea that Satan would be abated as a result, that Satan would not have grips on the next generation because they were properly educated in a Christian worldview. So that was the old Deluder Satan law in 1647, and out of it we get the not only the Boston Latin School but Harvard College at the time. It was called. A year later we get Harvard College from that law that was put in place. One of the oldest institutions. Of course, they've run away from their charter to be sure. But it was interesting as I kind of looked at that and looked at classical education. Most parents now who are homeschooling their children are engaging them in some form of classical education. This was the way that the vast majority of the founding fathers were educated. This is why young men at a young age had such brilliant minds about such a wide variety of subject matter, because it didn't teach them exactly what they should know. It taught them the manner in which they should think about the world. And as a result of having that kind of ability, they could look at a variety of topics and subjects masterfully, because all of it was anchored in the truth of God's word. And so this was something that was in place then. And so I do a hat tip to it in the 1640s, and then come forward to say that's the kind of education we need to get back to, and where we see it again primarily being utilized is in homeschool education.
I mean, it's crazy to think that that's how we started. That's where we started. And to think of where we are now. I mean, my wife is a public school teacher in New York City, and she has to go through certain books that they have in their library that they give to each classroom. And she actually, I don't know if this is like okay to do. So I don't know if I should say this.
We could cut it out. Yeah.
But my wife goes through the library and throws away all the books that have to do with like CRT, LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff. And then she brings it home to throw it away. But then my daughter started reading it. I was like, what are you doing? But anyway, that's where we're at now. And to the point where there are certain books that she has to go through and she's reading them, and it's almost pornographic in nature.
Yeah,
and this
crazy.
is for fifth graders.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are at now with public education. And so I guess my question is, what do we do then? Because it seems like for us, at least in our context, there's two routes. We could either go homeschooling, or we could go to a Christian private school. One is expensive. The other is difficult with two working parents, which I think most of us are. So what do we do here? Because I mean, I think some people are like, you know what, whatever. I guess I'll just have to send my kids to public school and just pray for the best. Yeah. But Is that really the best? How do we think through this?
I think those are individual decisions that each parent has to make. I've got my own preference as it relates to that. I can tell you kind of what we did as a family, and I wanted to send my daughter and my sons through Christian school, and then, until I looked at the statistics that show most of the Christian educators who are teaching have been educated in public colleges that has trained them in some form of socialism, Marxism, and the like. So they've come up in the education departments of some of the major colleges and universities that are rather liberal in their thinking, and their thought is, well, I'll sprinkle some Jesus on top and we'll be good to go. When in reality, they've been just as compromised but only by magnitude of smaller steps than some of the teachers who've been educated in a secular way, who've embraced secularism. There are a number of Pew studies that I've looked at where when you ask Christian educators, those who claim to be Christian and are in education, questions about biblical worldview, they only score 2 or 3 points above those with secular education who are doing the same kind of instruction and teaching. So even with quote unquote Christian schools, you've got to think very clearly about where you're sending them and what they're training and teaching and educating in those spaces. It really requires parents to make a decision, and even sacrifices to lifestyle and what you're willing to do in order to make sure that your kids get the best education. And so again, for some that's homeschool. Others use co-ops of some kind. Others, as a church, decide, hey, we're going to have a small school, and here's who we're going to hire and what we're going to do. But again, all that's not on pastors to do, right? That's not on your church leadership to do. That's a decision that you all make as a body to say, hey, we're going to do this, and here's the additional funds and resources that we're willing to put into place to ensure that those kinds of things happen. So while I don't have a one size fits all answer, in the same way for immigration, it's not a one size fits all solution for these things. But we as believers have got to stop knee-jerk reaction. Okay, I live here. They're going to go to XYZ public school, and we'll hope for the best. I don't think that's even close to an option anymore. You've got to make some decisions that are different than what you're seeing in culture.
Didn't you come up with an homeschooling curriculum?
Yeah, we have it. We have a homeschool curriculum that we're using where we are at G3. And we're working with different homeschool co-ops as well. Oh, awesome. I just got a text while I was here from the president of G3. We're trying to connect with Classical Conversations and begin developing some different options for parents, because the reality is, homeschools are growing and parents are anxiously awaiting solutions. They recognize the problem. They're wanting a solution. And I think at ministries like ours and others, it's incumbent upon us to provide some answers, some real tools that will be helpful to parents.
What about public school teachers? So we actually have multiple teachers in our school that align with Scripture and the doctrines and teaching of the Reformed faith. Do you have any maybe pastoral advice or wisdom for them?
They're Christians, but they're in public school.
They're
settings.
teaching in public school settings. Which is now considered a hostile environment, maybe even like a mission field for Christians. And so what advice, what wisdom would you give them to stand firm, to persevere, not to succumb to pressures like we've been talking about in this past weekend?
I'd say get out.
Get out.
Get out.
Oh.
Yeah, there's no offense about
Get
it.
out.
Get out.
Who, me?
Get out. Yeah. And again, I know that's harsh and direct, and I saw some of the people in the audience, their eyes kind of went bug.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it. And again, I'm not saying do that tomorrow. I'm not saying go to school and sign your your resignation, but I am saying it's beyond a hostile environment. You are now being asked to do things that violate your Christian faith. They're in direct opposition to what you believe, and so you've got to be thinking about, what is my exit strategy? And here's the reality. There are parents who cannot wait for you to make a decision to get out and perhaps be the person that starts something in a church that allows you to express the full breadth, depth of your faith in a God-honoring way that really helps children learn the classical education model that we're talking about. I don't say that lightly. I do mean what I say. by that. They need to think about, plan on, strategize, because that day is coming when you will be asked in some way, shape, or form, if you have not already, to violate your Christian faith, to stand in opposition to what you believe. And again, look, we can talk. We were talking earlier today about what it means to be willing to be persecuted for your faith. What does that look like? For Paul, it looked one way. He knew he was in chains in a dungeon and in a cell. And for you, it's where you are in a public school system, trying to maintain your Christian belief and being asked to hand a pornographic book to a child for the purpose of their sexual education. We've got to draw lines in some places, make decisions, and plan your exit. That would be my advice.
Sort of like we have to go back to maybe even the roots, because Harvard was started by a minister. It was associated with the church.
Yeah.
You know the Harvard Shield logo, the motto is, you know what it is, right, Sam?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's Veritas, right? Veritas.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Veritas.
Yeah, it's truth.
Truth.
But it wasn't Veritas in the very beginning. It was actually Veritas Christos et Ecclesiae.
Yeah.
So it was truth for Christ and the church.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what they took out? And they only have the
Christ
word
and church.
Veritas now.
Yeah.
And so we've come a long way from where originally this school was started for Christ and the church. Truth for Christ and the church. And now we're just saying we're going to take our Christ and the church, and we can find truth without it. And then it's no wonder that all these schools will also follow suit, and they'll just abandon truth wholesale. Now, what do you think about then? Maybe churches should, like you said, should churches prepare to start a school?
Yeah. Well, again, the purpose of the church, is to glorify God. It's to equip the saints for works of ministry. I think if you have the capacity to equip the saints for that work of ministry, you do so post haste. You do so right away. A pastor should not be the one. The elders should not be the one trying to run a church and lead a school. But if you have qualified people in the body who are educators, I think there's nothing wrong with looking at what that might look like for the members of your church and opening up something that would be helpful to the body.
No, that's really helpful. I think it's no coincidence that in our church we have maybe a dozen or more public educators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What would you name it?
Sam's
School of Education.
I could come up with a name, but I'm gonna leave it alone.
If it's Paul, that'll be the one. Now I'm saying it. Oh man. I guess just in connection to this, are there any resources? And I know you mentioned from G3 that there are homeschooling resources.
Sure.
Any resources that you'd recommend for parents that are looking to disciple, maybe even catechize their children and kids, and also maybe some resources that'd be helpful for family worship as well?
Yeah, we have a full-on resource library at g3min.org. G, the number 3, min.org. We've got all kinds of free resources that you could pull for families, for homeschooling, for family worship, guides, resources to help train, educate, equip your children, hymnals, curricula, all kinds of things that are available. Living Heritage has a full-orbed curricula for homeschool and the like. Journals, 52-week catechisms, tuning our heart, all of that for free. Download it free of charge. Utilize it. We have an app that you can go on. It's a G3 Plus app that you can go on, download. You can get that on your phone and have access to video content, education resources, you name it.
Yeah.
All there. And again, I'm a big fan of my kids. I took them through classical conversations, and so that's a great tool, great resource that I highly recommend. My daughter graduated. My boys, I think went through about ninth. I think about high school. I stopped, and I wish I hadn't. But I think right about ninth grade I stopped them. But they went through the earlier grades and through that process. So.
And you talked about catechizing your children as well. Could you just kind of share with us maybe a little bit of what that process looked like?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe why you and your wife decided to do it
Yeah.
that way. And do
Well,
that
I was impressed by once I had an understanding of a biblical worldview. I wanted to make sure that my kids understood. And for me, when I thought about education, they were so young, third grade, fourth grade, and I was recognizing as they got to middle school what their education was like. My thought was, I'm not an educator. My wife is not a trained educator, but my thought was me doing their education poorly is better than the school system doing it well. Does that make sense? Like if the school system does their job well, what I'll end up raising are children who hate God and who are anti everything that I've put in them. If I do it poorly, they'll know much about God, but perhaps not quite as much as they should. And that's a better condition for them than imbibing all of what the world had to offer them. So my wife and I were willing to do that. So a couple of things we did. I'm connected to the 1689 London Baptist Confession, and so there's a catechism that goes along with that, a smaller catechism. So we use that and we ask a question. And usually, what my wife would do, she would teach during the day with our kids, and then when I came home, I would just kind of walk through a question and answer with them, and they began to understand, about who God is and why God created them, and then they would have the answer back and forth. We would do that kind of on a daily basis, but it was incorporated as well with family worship. And so again, I mentioned family worship earlier, and for us, it's not. It wasn't something that they sat down and listened to me for 45 minutes, do an exegetical sermon on something in depth. It was just I knew that my youngest had about a 10, 12-minute kind of span of attention span. And so I tried to kind of hit under 10 minutes. During the course of our dinner, right before dinner, we would open the scripture. I would read something from a proverb or a psalm or something really brief that way. I asked each one of them, what their needs were, what they wanted to be prayed for about. And I would ask the younger one to pray for the older ones to pray for the younger ones. Dad would kind of close with a prayer. It was very brief, and then we'd sing maybe the doxology, and that was our family worship together. So it wasn't. Now, as they got older, I would add layers to it, and we would have conversations. That my intention was for it to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they would want to carry a conversation on for 30 minutes or 40 minutes as they got older, and they had questions about Scripture or the like. And so, even now, I've done this periodically, and I'm not. I don't ever want to sound like For us, it was it was every day. It wasn't. It was once a week that we got gathered together and did kind of our family worship. That worked for us. And so even as older, as adult children now, for a while I would still call them on a Sunday morning. They were in Omaha. I'm in Georgia, and we would just have a brief time of just kind of family worship, just to connect, hear how they're doing, what they've got going on. But what it's built is we were talking about a heritage kind of passed down from one generation to the next. For them, they have a memory, a connection point with Dad gathering them together and helping them to memorize Scripture and catechizing them and understanding the Word. And they know that if they have a question, my son, there's nothing in the world more special than my son, who I'm on a trip and he'll send me a text and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm reading this verse of Scripture. Can you help me understand this a little bit?" Like that's everything. Like that's everything, and that's a blessing.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. So we do have a couple of questions that people have sent in that I wanted to ask. The last one is a fun one.
Okay, good.
I didn't tell you this one.
You didn't tell me any of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. This is a random one.
Okay. These are quick hits, so no long answers, right?
Like a medium one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Medium long.
Yep.
As Christians living in a time with so much abundance, amenities, is there a way we should test ourselves for idolatry of material prosperity?
Oh, wow. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah.
Probably.
That's a good answer.
I think there's like this stick.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Like idol worshiper. Oh, no.
we know that John Calvin said that the heart of a man is an idol factory. So
Yeah,
that's definitely there. And I think you can make an idol out of anything, whether it's your material wealth or the clothes you have on or the way that you look or what you do. So I think the test would be remove yourself from that thing and see how you do. And if it's more problematic than it should be or more of a challenge, then you're probably stepping across the line and you need to readjust in some way. So
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Next question is, how old was Adam when he was created?
old enough.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But like how, like 30, 40?
Well, he was definitely old
50.
enough to have kids. So
Oh, that's true.
yeah.
I didn't ask this question. This wasn't me. No, this was. Someone just texted me, if you may, his 5 top favorite contemporary preachers.
Oh, really?
That's a good one.
My pastor, Josh Bice, I listen to him every Sunday. I absolutely love his preaching. I'm learning how to be a better preacher from listening to my pastor at my church. So by far, Josh Bice, John MacArthur, contemporary, so they have to be living. I love Stephen Lawson. Love listening to him. I love though not a, and I think he would admit this. So I've got Josh Bice. I said Stephen Lawson.
Yeah, MacArthur.
I said
Stephen
MacArthur. I while not an expositor, I love hearing him preach, and that's Paul Washer.
Oh, Brother Paul. Yeah.
He's just
No, you call him Brother Paul.
I do.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. He's not a doctor.
No.
He's his brother Paul. I mean, whenever I've introduced him, that's how I've introduced him. Man, that's tough. I mean, it'd be easy to say Vody because I just heard him preach not long ago. In fact, last weekend he just wrecked the house, and so that'd be real easy for me to kind of pick off those guys. They're all living, so that works.
I want to meet him one day.
Who?
All of them.
Bro, just come through G3.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
I got you. Just come on through. Like, it's easy. I'll take care of you.
I feel like I might get nervous though.
Why?
I don't know. I just get a little
If
giddy.
you're with me, you won't be nervous.
Oh yeah. You
be with me. We'll just be like, yo, what's up?
Is Paul gonna come?
He can.
Nope.
I'm
I'm not going.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm just kidding. It'll be us two, no Paul.
Okay.
But this is the last
You're
question.
bringing it up, though.
I know it's because you.
I didn't do anything.
Brian has a lot of editing to do this week. But this is the final question, and it has to do with, once again, our topic for this weekend. But being a Christian in today's society can be tough. We're called a lot of names. We're ridiculed. We're labeled different things. People may slander us and may unfairly make judgments that are not true.
Yeah.
And I think this is especially true for those who have a greater platform, right? So you're a pastor, a published author, a leader at G3. You have a podcast. You go on interviews. You're on TV. You're in the light for people to see. And oftentimes, because of the biblical positions that you've taken, people have called you names, ridiculed you, and said not so nice things about you. I'm wondering, how do you handle that? And perhaps it'll shed some light on how we can handle the pressures at our workplace. But I guess just personally, how do you handle pressures like that and stay faithful throughout?
Yeah. I think it really begins with not thinking too much of yourself. I mean, it really does. I'm honored by being with you all. I'm honored by having the opportunity to be on a podcast. I'm honored by Pastor Eugene allowing me a space in this place to speak to his flock. Like, that's honoring, right? And so I don't take that lightly. I say all that simply. It's not an act of humility. Like, I'm grateful for the word. I recognize the gift that God has given me to preach His word, to teach His word. I'm grateful for that. But I don't wear that like a suit jacket. There's so many men that I'm around on a regular basis who outshine me by 1,000, comparatively speaking, as it pertains to the delivery of His word or those kinds of things. So I don't think of myself as more than I ought. And so as a result, when people say negative things about me, my response is usually, yeah, they're probably right, right? But not about the thing that they're charging me with. So, I really don't care. I care if I get something wrong. I care if I said something incorrect. I care if I've mishandled the Word of God. Even with you all, as I preach, I'm thinking about Pastor Eugene. I'm hoping I'm saying right things. I know that he'd correct me, or any other one of the elders here would say, "Hey, you said this a little off or wrong." I look for those things, and so that's kind of how I operate. So regardless of how quote unquote large my platform is, and all of that's relative, right? I mean, I don't. There are things I care about. I care about my family. I care about my wife. There are things I don't care about. Someone thinks I'm a meanie, or someone thinks I'm
haters.
Or they hate an article I wrote about something.
Yeah.
Usually when I write articles, they are very well researched, and so I'm coming from a standpoint of the information that I've been provided. I'm looking at that against the backdrop of a biblical worldview, and so I don't take it personally. I recognize people are going to be upset. Last thing about this, when I compare the persecution that we endure to, I mentioned Polycarp as a martyr the other night. You got to be kidding me. No one's binding me to take me to a stake and light me on fire. Like, let's get perspective. Somebody who's hating me on social media, like, and what? That's a small comparator to being dragged out. It's a small comparator to a person who's got to make a decision, who's in a public school system and now has to make a decision. Do I stay and hand these kids this pornographic book, or do I make a stand and let them know I'm unwilling to do that? And here's why. I stand for Christ and Him crucified, right? That's a stand. That's something that you're going to have to deal with. That's going to have consequences and repercussions. Somebody hating me on Twitter, I could turn it off. Like, that doesn't matter. So it's all perspective.
I think he also lets his haters be his motivators.
Yeah, wait, there's a song. Yeah, there's a song on that podcast that they made. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was really encouraged.
Yeah, I know that if we've got a bunch of folks responding on social media, that I'm on the right nerve.
Right.
Like, I'm hitting the right spot. Like,
Right,
if there's
right.
no one saying anything, I'm like, we're missing it. We're not over the target yet. Like, we do track, like, okay, we talked about this topic. How many folks are upset? Nobody. Man, we missed it. Like, we missed it. We didn't hit the
Gotta
mark.
have some haters.
Yeah, you've got to. So
I have no haters, so
I don't know.
I never.
I don't
I guess
know.
I'm always just
Today's
missing.
opposite day. That's what it is today. What a Monday, huh?
Well, thank you, Pastor Virgil. I think that was really encouraging for all of us and really insightful for us. So if we could just kind of
Thank you.
And we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we talk about. What are we going to talk about next? What was that? Complacency. I forgot about that. I was complacent. Complacency part 2. I completely forgot. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight. Finish the race. Keep the faith.
Peace.
I always say peace. Sorry.
Cool.